Okay, so you know that feeling when you finish a really popular new book, you loved it, but then maybe a few months down the line, you grab another bestseller and it just feels, well, weirdly familiar.
Oh, totally. Like you've met these characters before.
Yeah.
Or maybe the plot twists, even just the feel of the story.
Exactly. It's this sense a lot of readers seem to be having that so much traditionally published fiction is starting to sound the same.
Yeah, and it's not just, similar ideas popping up again and again. It feels deeper than that.
Right. It's like the actual author's voice, their specific style, that unique fingerprint. It's getting harder to spot sometimes.
It really is. Almost like you could, I don't know, swap the covers on a bunch of current hits.
And you wouldn't immediately notice a huge clash in the writing style itself. The stories are fine, usually pretty smooth reading.
Mm-hmm. Competent.
Yeah, competent. But that thing, that unmistakable voice that makes you go, that's an author's name novel, it feels like it's missing more often.
Well, if you think about the publishing world, you can sort of see how it happens, maybe. From a purely market standpoint, anyway.
Sure.
There's this tendency to back what's already working, what's proven to sell, certain genres, familiar character types.
Oh, yeah, the brooding detective, the chosen one kid, the enemies to lovers thing. They become reliable, don't they?
They do. They're kind of like safe bets.
And that must put pressure on writers, right? Especially new ones. Maybe pressure to kind of tone down their quirks, to fit into those boxes.
Definitely. It's like aiming for broad appeal sometimes means sanding off the really interesting, unique edges of a writer's style.
Which brings us to a big question for you, listening right now, someone who really loves books. What actually happens when that distinctive voice, that unique way of telling a story, starts to fade away?
We risk losing something important, don't we?
Yeah.
Those unexpected ways of looking at things, the turns of phrase that stick with you, the perspectives that really make you think.
Yeah. That's the core of it, isn't it? If every book starts feeling like a slightly different version of the last one you read, if the writing is okay, but just forgettable.
Does literature lose some of its spark?
Yeah.
Its soul, almost?
Right. Do we end up with stories that are just interchangeable, that don't really surprise us or challenge us or connect in that deep way?
Exactly. It's not just about being entertained for a few hours. It's about potentially losing those singular viewpoints, those unique lenses great authors give us to see the world differently. Homogenization could really narrow that field.
Okay, so we've talked about this idea, this homogenized modern fiction. Let's get into the really practical stuff now. What can writers actually do about it?
Yeah, how can they nurture their own unique style, that flair that makes their work stand out?
Well, thankfully, we've got some really great pointers from sources like Crafting Immersive Fiction, a guide, and the Fiction Writing Style Guide. They offer some pretty concrete ways forward.
And what's cool is that both guides, even if they come at it slightly differently, they really zero in on the basics of distinctive writing. It's not about fancy tricks or being weird for the sake of it.
No, it's more about really digging into the craft, right? Being intentional.
Exactly. Deep engagement with storytelling itself.
Okay, let's start with something fundamental. Building worlds that feel totally real, that you can almost touch. Crafting immersive fiction really hammers this home grounding scenes in specific visceral details using all five senses.
It makes such a difference. They give examples like the crisp snap of autumn leaves.
You can hear that.
Right. Or the acrid tang of burned coffee. You immediately smell it. You're in that moment. It's so much better than just saying it was fall or the coffee tasted bad.
That precision lifts you out of generic description instead of just the room was cold, maybe something like
a damp chill seeped from the stone, raising goosebumps. Or, describing the smell of old wood smoke that isn't quite cutting it against the cold.
Yeah, it's about creating that full sensory picture for the reader, making the world feel solid, palpable.
And it's not just background detail, is it? The guides also talk about how the environment can actually mirror or amplify what the characters are feeling inside.
Oh, that's a great point. Like thick fog reflecting someone's confusion or moral gray area.
Or bright sunshine maybe boosting a moment of hope, or even, a sudden crash of thunder right in the middle of a shouting match. It just ramps up the drama.
And looking at the Fiction Writing Style Guide, you see that same emphasis, right? Descriptive imagery, sensory appeal. They're positioned as basics for pulling readers in.
Absolutely. The idea is the reader doesn't just want to watch the story. They want to feel it, hear it, smell it along with the characters. That's what makes it immersive.
Totally. And that advice about precise language, it's so key. Like the example they use in an old building versus, what was it?
A Baroque chapel. It's ochre stucco blistered by centuries of salt winds.
Yes. See, the second one gives you history, texture, even a hint of the climate. It's so much richer.
That specificity is everything. Old building is just a label. The chapel description paints a picture, evokes a mood.
And that tip about keeping a sensory journal, actually paying attention to those details in real life to use later, that seems like a really practical way to build that muscle.
Definitely good exercise for any writer wanting to sharpen those skills.
Okay, so we've got the world feeling real. What about the story's structure? Crafting immersive fiction gets into structuring with layered complexity. Moving beyond just A leads to B leads to C.
Yeah, this is about creating real narrative depth, often by weaving together different timelines or points of view, trusting the reader to connect the pieces.
I liked the idea of flashbacks feeling organic, not just plopped in, like maybe triggered by a smell or a sound.
Mm-hmm. Like the scent of a particular flower suddenly throws a character back into a memory of loss. It feels earned, emotionally resonant, much better than just 10 years earlier.
For sure. And the fiction writing style guide echoes this, right?
Yeah.
Talking about multiple interweaving storylines and using flashbacks frequently. It's about building a more complex tapestry.
Exactly. Different threads connecting, sometimes obviously, sometimes more subtly, to create a richer whole.
Also, varying the rhythm that felt important, like having a really fast-paced action bit, then slowing down for a quiet, reflective moment.
Keeps the reader on their toes, prevents it from feeling flat or one note.
And ending scenes on a hook. Like that example, the letter arrives at noon, it begins with a lie. Who wouldn't want to turn the page after that?
Right. Those little cliffhangers, those unanswered questions, they pull the reader forward. And using recurring symbols, like the broken watch or a specific flower showing up again and again.
Yeah, crafting immersive fiction mentioned that, how it links things together thematically.
Adds another layer of meaning, creates that sense of connection beneath the surface.
Okay, let's shift to something really core, to an author's unique fingerprint. Pacing. How the story feels as you read it. Crafting immersive fiction calls it mastering pacing through language.
This is where the rhythm of the words themselves comes in. Sentence length, structure. It all controls the heartbeat of the story.
They had that brilliant contrast, a long, flowing sentence like, wisteria dripped from the trellises, their petals pooling like spilled wine. It feels slow, languid, almost sleepy.
Yeah, it creates a whole mood. And then you contrast it with, she ran, he followed, the jade slammed.
Bam, 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 short, sharp, urgent, you feel the speed. The fiction writing style guide also talks about deliberately mixing up long and short sentences like that.
And word choice plays a role too, right? Picking a more specific, maybe slightly elevated word like vermilion instead of just red can subtly shift the tone or draw attention. Judiciously, of course.
Right, not overdoing it. And I love the point about dialogue acting as a counterpoint to description.
How so?
Like, you could have this paragraph dripping with detail about some fancy, opulent room, and then one sharp line of dialogue cuts right through it.
Yeah, like quite the golden cage, isn't it?
Exactly. It instantly reveals character or underlying tension. The style guide also mentioned balancing that detailed description with snappy, realistic dialogue.
Keeps things moving, keeps it human. Dialogue does so much heavy lifting for character and plot.
Speaking of character, obviously crucial for memorable fiction. Both guides had good thoughts here. Crafting immersive fiction really pushed revealing characters through subtlety.
Show, don't just tell. The classic advice, but so true.
Instead of Clara was anxious, show us.
Claire's thumbnail worried the seam of her sleeve. Something small, physical, that shows the anxiety. Lets the reader figure it out.
Yes, much more powerful. And layering contradictions in people, like the tough businessman who secretly writes poetry.
Or the firefighter who's terrified of heights in their off hours. Makes them feel like real messy humans, not just archetypes.
The fiction writing style guide calls it characterization through observation, right? Focusing on actions, internal thoughts, body language.
All those little tells. And revealing backstory slowly in hints, like maybe someone flinches at loud noises, hinting at past trauma that builds mystery and depth.
Oh yeah, body language. So much can be said without a word. A character avoiding eye contact, a slight tightening of the jaw.
It conveys all that unspoken stuff, the subtext between people, really brings interactions to life.
Okay, last big area, theme and symbolism. How writers can give their stories that extra layer of meaning. Crafting immersive fiction talks about infusing themes with duality and symbolism.
Getting beneath the surface plot to the underlying ideas, using contrasts is a big part of that.
Like a super sterile modern apartment versus a wild, overgrown garden nearby. setting up that visual opposition to reflect maybe inner conflict or a larger theme.
Exactly. And names. Choosing names with purpose like Seraphina for someone angelic, or maybe Hephaestus for a character who crafts things but is maybe isolated.
The style guide mentions symbolic names, settings, actions too. It adds that subtle resonance.
And foreshadowing with objects like seeing a tiny crack in a vase early on, and then later it shatters completely during a big emotional scene.
Gives it that feeling of inevitability, connects the dots. The style guide also mentioned exploring themes of duality, those contrasting elements.
All about adding that thematic weight.
And quickly, on editing, crafting immersive fiction, mentioned editing for atmospheric cohesion, basically making sure all these pieces work together.
Checking the balance, right? Not too much description here, maybe adding a sound effect there, the click of a watch, the scent of clove, trimming anything that feels overwritten.
Reading dialogue out loud to catch awkward phrasing is that final polish.
Absolutely essential, making sure the voice and the atmosphere really land.
Yep. So, bringing this all back around to that initial worry about homogenized modern fiction, it really feels like focusing on these techniques. The sensory details, the complex structures, the pacing, the subtle character work, the symbolism, and careful editing. These are the tools writers can use.
They really are. Powerful tools to create stories that feel unique, that have that authorial fingerprint, and that really engage you, the reader.
Because while, formulas might sell books,
the stories that truly stick with us, the ones we remember years later, often do so because they break that mold. They offer that richness, that complexity, that unique voice.
It's about creating an experience, not just delivering a plot.
Exactly. Something felt, not just read.
So, a final thought for you listening.
Yeah.
Maybe think about the last few books or stories you really got into. Did they feel distinct? Did they have that unique authorial stamp?
What was it specifically that made them memorable? Or conversely, what made others feel kind of forgettable?
Yeah, maybe just pay a little closer attention to those elements of style next time you pick up a book. It could be pretty revealing.